Hi, I'm Alex Howard, and welcome to Conscious 2. My guest in the studio today is Rafia Morgan. Hi, Rafia.
Hello, Alex.
And Rafia has been leading spiritual therapy groups around the world for the last 35 years. And in today's interview, we're going to be exploring masculinity and spirituality. And I think, Rafia, maybe the starting point here is something that I certainly have noticed in the past in my own path of spiritual development, let's say, and something that I've also definitely observed in, let's say, male peers of mine on their path, is that there's a lot of work around clarifying the mind, opening the heart, but there can sometimes be a sense that something is missing in terms of a sense of masculinity, like a sense of having what it takes, a sense of substance. Can you say something about that? I mean, we're going to come into this obviously a lot more, but just to kind of set a frame of that. How do you see that?
Well, I want to concur with your observation because I see it as well. And we'll talk about it a little bit more generally because I think it's a condition actually that underlies masculine expression throughout the world, whether it's in the spiritual community or not. It has a particular flavor a lot of times when people start to work on themselves and develop the sensitivity of their heart and meditate. And often I've noticed the people who are drawn to that kind of work have also a certain rejection inside of the masculine as it's showing up in the world, as they've seen it, as they've been victim to, as they've been taught. And so we get a lot of very sensitive people who, beautiful, beautiful souls who are developing themselves, but they kind of don't want to go there a lot of times with the masculine stuff. And it's my own personal belief that they need to.
Right. Well, I think one of the ways that I think this can show up, and it's part of what kind of when we first started talking about these interviews, kind of made me really want to talk about this, is I think especially for men that need to function in the world, where let's say they have children support, they've got real worldly responsibilities, and they need that sense of I can do this to be able to function in those ways. And somehow the more they work with their heart and being spacious, that stuff's all great and of course has great value. But there's something about that quality of just being able to show up and be solid and do what needs to be done.
Yeah. And it's actually really needed, I think, in order to feel, one, relaxed in yourself, two, even choosing the right work for yourself, and three, being really optimally effective at what you do. And if you look at what most of us have received as an introduction, a teaching, a training, an initiation into the masculine, it's, what is it? It's almost nothing. We're imitating the people around us, the level in which the masculine is kind of crystallized in the society. But did we really get supported by our fathers? Like really saying, this is what it is, and teaching us in many different ways how to be a man and what it is to be masculine. Do we get that kind of support? I didn't, and I don't meet many people who did. And it's because their fathers didn't have it either. They're deficient in that way because they didn't get it, and there is a kind of what is a horrible word in one way, but a very accurate word which describes it, and it's the word castration. Yeah. And it literally means not having balls. I've been castrated.
And that can be the felt sense. I mean, when one goes in a kind of sensing kind of way, if that's an issue that someone, I'll talk from personal experience. I know that when I was really working that issue, I would go in and I would feel like something was literally missing, like there was a lack of substance there.
Yeah, and you were somebody who actually had the courage and the intelligence to go in there and actually feel that. most of us don't even go there and feel that. It arises as an anxiety, usually in the solar plexus, because not having your balls and not having that relaxed confidence that I have what it takes inside of me to meet the challenges of life, and I don't need to effort, I don't need to perform, I don't need to pump myself up, I don't need to over-intellectualize everything, just to be relaxed and with yourself and present as a man is really quite a big thing to do. And
well, I want to say I had
yeah.
help.
Huh?
I want to say I had help, and it is terrifying going to that place, because it's almost like your greatest fear is confirmed. Because
Exactly.
because the discovery is, oh my God, right now I feel like I don't have what it takes.
Yeah.
You just touched on very quickly there. I'd like just to kind of go into a bit more detail. Something you were saying to me off camera about some of the different styles that people can use to compensate against this. And one of the things I read in the notes that you sent me, and I was reading yesterday, it made me smile. You said something about someone being a dickhead. And what I think you meant by that, I don't think it was aimed at me, but what I think you meant by that was a sense that it's almost like what we're lacking down below, we try and compensate for up above. So it's almost like if we're lacking contact with our genitals, it's like we start to over-intellectualize and use that. And you even said before we started filming, it could almost be like having a dick in our head that we're kind of constantly trying to poke into everything to kind of show that we've got it. Say a bit more about that, but also some of the other styles that I thought was a really helpful way of conceptualizing it.
Okay. I mean, first of all, there's a number of different strategies for compensating for that lack of relaxed confidence, that feeling of presence and solidity, groundedness and fullness that's there for really at home in the masculine. And one of them, which I love to use this word, is the dickhead. And basically what it's saying is, I don't have much down here, so I'm going to put on a big one up here. and make my neck really tense, right. rigid, and try and penetrate the world with my head.
Right.
And you see lots of men doing that.
Yeah.
And in a way, it's just a painful compensation for, I'm not going to make it. I don't have what it takes unless I really get it right and I understand it all. And I develop a lot of really rigid concepts about how the world is. And then I'm going to be able to push through, And it's very prevalent. It's a very common compensation.
Yes, and of course you see that in spiritual practice, when you see guys that have read all the books and intellectualize it or know it all in their head, but something here and something here and something down here is lacking somehow.
Yeah, of course. You see it there. You see it also. Another word for castration for me is macho. I think macho equals castration. Now, you usually wouldn't say that because that's a more out there kind of, this is a guy who's really in his energy. But when I see it and when I feel it in that postured kind of masculine macho way, underneath it, I don't sense any substance. It's another way to compensate. It's a performance.
Yes.
And so, and it's a dangerous one also, because it's also acting out a lot of that frustration a lot of the times at not feeling like I've really got what it takes to do the job.
I mean, the cliche that comes to mind when you talk about macho is the kind of American football kind of jock there's like in that, there's a constant sense of needing to prove one's masculinity, which of course is, if we need to keep proving something, it's because we don't feel substantial inside of it.
But not so many people are really interested in really seeing, why am I pushing so hard? Excuse me. Why do I effort so much? Why am I trying to prove myself? What would happen if I didn't? And if you didn't, and you really start to engage that process, then that feeling of lack opens up. And as you said, when you went into it, it was terrifying, because it's the feeling then I don't have any ground and all my worst fears are going to come true. I'm not going to make it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And can you said a bit earlier as well, before we started filming, a couple other examples I really like. One around just kind of being, just spacing out, kind of being distant, disappearing, and also talking about overcompensating, being very heartfelt and very tender. Could you say a bit more about those as well?
Yeah, these are other strategies, or it might be that we have a mix of all of them, and part of my work in this field has been, to really identify the different ways that I behave when I don't feel solid, grounded, and relaxed and confident in my masculinity. And one of them is to become really withdrawn. I don't feel that, or I'm afraid to, or I miss the opportunity to really stand up for and say how I feel, or put out what I value, or put out what I need, or put out what my vision is. And the collapse of not doing that and holding back. Holding back is another important word I want to get back to in a bit. And holding back often creates a tendency then to withdraw. And in that withdrawal, what I see myself doing and what I see other men doing when it happens is becoming very moody. And that's sometimes, and moodiness is an interesting thing to investigate into, because sometimes it's very romanticized and it's so deep, and but what are we doing sometimes when we're sitting on our computers, or when we're writing poetry, or when we're doing different, a lot of times, sensitive things? There's that withdrawn kind of poisonous, toxic vibe around us that's very different from, this is what I feel. Moods are endlessly complex. They're like a swamp, and feelings are pretty simple. I'm angry, I'm happy, I'm jealous, I'm in love. They're simple. But a man who feels he lacks that confidence, that grounding, and that solidity inside of himself is going to have difficulty communicating that. So that's one, the withdrawn guy.
Yes.
Very overly sensitive. And that's a little bit what often comes into the spiritual field. There's guys like this. And you mentioned one other one, I'm forgetting it right now.
I was saying the kind of place where one is very developed in their heart and their sensitivity, and that's genuine and true. And yet it's almost like guys can lose their sense of their masculinity and almost becoming very feminine in how they're being. But in a sense, they're doing that to compensate from the fact they haven't got substance in their more masculine qualities.
Yeah, and usually in that case, there's some issues to work out with mom. In the nightmare of when mom gets emotional, or when mom gets scary, or when mom withholds the love. And some activation starts to happen inside, and we feel these things. She's going to be trouble, and then we can go into this kind of pleasing mode, basically trying to damage control mom, and it doesn't work. Women hate it. They hate the pleaser.
Because in an intimate relationship, of course, the source of love becomes one's wife or girlfriend or whatever. And that's now mom. So the same pattern plays out, right?
The same pattern plays out, and usually rather disastrously, because the woman wants a man to show up. She's always testing, is there really a man here? And it's so easy. If we're in that little boy pleaser thing, she can castrate us with one look. It's just like... the balls are off,
right?
So, but it feels like a compulsion, because there's the feeling that, oh my God, something bad's going to happen if mom gets too upset. I need to correct the situation. I need to attend to it.
Yes.
And so it's just another one of those strategies where people don't feel that groundedness and that presence, where you might say, hey, what's going on with you right now? Or I'm not feeling so connected right now. Or I'm feeling a little bit afraid right now, and I'd like to talk about, I'm curious how you're feeling, which is a very different thing than just going into pleasing mode.
Yes.
And it invites connection.
Right.
And I find women will go to connection pretty easily if they feel a man is there.
Yeah, but sometimes what's happening, in fact, I remember I was doing to you with Mark Quinn, who's involved in the orgasmic meditation tradition. One of the things he was saying was, often what a woman is testing is exactly what you say. Can you handle me? Are you here? Are you solid?
Totally. I mean, the knife is on the neck or on another part of our because that's what a woman wants. She wants a man who's present. And what does present mean? Present means grounded and relaxed and confident in your masculinity, not posturing, not pretending, not performing, not inflated, certainly not a dickhead.
And the thing is, of course, women have an amazing capacity to see through these
They know it in a
strategies.
second.
Right.
They know it in a second.
Right.
And the sad part is then if the man doesn't show up, then the woman often doesn't feel safe and goes to her masculine side, And
that's really interesting. And I wanted to ask you about that. One of the things that can happen is if a man's not being a man, the woman has to become the man to provide the holding in the relationship.
She does that, but she probably also has a history from her own past where she hasn't felt safe, she hasn't felt honored, loved, adored, valued is the right word, in the feminine, and she's developed a pretty strong way to defend that by often becoming a better man than the man.
Yeah.
Faster, smarter, quicker, better.
Mm.
And so,
which only castrates further.
Which castrates further. But what I feel with most women is they so want to open up in their feminine, but it requires the man to be there. The situation's not really safe if a man's not there. If he's off in his head, if he's withdrawn and moody, if he's a macho, all of those things are disconnected spaces. They're not grounded. They don't engender connection and a feeling of safety and presence. And they certainly don't create polarity.
Yeah.
For the woman to move to the feminine, the guy's got to show up.
Yeah, and of course it's a whole other conversation, but it's polarity that creates attraction and creates energy and creates sexual chemistry, right?
Exactly. And, a relationship, it might be kind of politically, spiritually, socially correct sometimes to become these kind of, neuter 50-50s or something. And it makes for great friendship, but it makes for bad sex.
Point well made.
There's energy. Polarity, energy is in polarities.
Right.
In everything in duality on this physical planet moves between polarities. And we, unfortunately, have grown up in a time where those roles are quite confused.
Yeah.
I often have thought, as I became aware of cultures that either had in their past or maybe still do have some kind of rite of passage or initiation into the masculine.
Yeah.
Like, wow, how my life would have been different
Yeah.
if my dad had been part of that with a bunch of other men and they'd taken me through something that consciously demonstrated to me what a man can be and supported me to be able to find that presence in myself.
Yes.
My God, the relaxation that would have given to me and the anxieties it would have saved me. Because the feeling of being castrated and not being really grounded brings tremendous anxiety
and great suffering. I mean, we're going to shoot another interview after this, looking at some of the resolution of this.
Yeah.
But I just also wanted to get into a little bit that one of the ways that I think men can try to resolve this issue, and it's also another issue that I think can go on as well, which is the issue around, for a man, seeking freedom and autonomy, but also staying present and being in connection in a relationship. And one of the things that you touched upon is the need for a man to be present, to not just be physically present, but emotionally and spiritually present, to be there. But there's also that kind of longing within a man towards freedom and autonomy. And we could go into all the biological reasons around kind of supporting survival of the human species of men, multiple kind of partners and that kind of thing. But how do we resolve that? Because it seems to me that one of the the ways that we can try to deal with the castration is to think, well, if I was with this person or there, then I would feel like a man. But of course, that just causes more problems.
Yeah, and it doesn't ever get back to, it's an acting out, as are the other compensations. And a man does need his space, and he does need a way to feel that energy, that longing for freedom, and the thrill and the edge that brings. But it's an inner quality more than it is an outer action, certainly when it comes to a compensation. But it can also have its outer manifestations in physicality, and doing things with other men, in going on adventures. All these things are very good. They're very healing, and rejuvenating to the masculine. But the issue of autonomy, and in a relationship, I think it's a very difficult one. I think men also have that longing for freedom, but we also have the longing for love. We need both. And if we're not getting either one, and if we're not standing up for my need for space and independence and autonomy, and I'm compromising by staying in some kind of dull merged space in the relationship's going to go flat, and then I'm going to start really craving getting out there. And where does my mind go? It goes to another woman a lot of the times, that becomes what the symbol of my freedom and my manhood. But actually, if you really go back to it, you're still castrated. You're still acting out.
Everywhere you go, there you are, right?
Yeah, exactly. You still haven't dealt with that place that's anxious, that's tense, that feels like I haven't got what it takes to do the job, And so, so we go. And this is really what happens so often in relationships.
Yeah. So we're going to do a second interview. We're going to come into some of the resolution. Maybe just as we've got a minute or two left, maybe just as a final point here. Can you say something about what it feels like to have some kind of resolution? Maybe as a teaser to where we're going to go with this, but what it's like to be, I don't know what the word is for uncastrated, to have balls, right? So what is it like to have surgery and reattach the balls in a sense, and be in a relationship? Like what's some of the felt sense of that quality?
Well, without broadcasting my balls, the feeling that the manifestation of it is relaxation and clarity and a sense of direction and a lessening of mental activity, and certainly a lessening of this anxiety around performance. Will I make it? Which I think every man, if he's honest, knows what that feels like with regard to sex, with regard to jobs, with regard to accomplishment, and that landing in that grounded, solid space, while it might not be there all the time, it might be an ongoing investigation and inquiry and embodiment. Certainly I think it is, May there be more ever greater challenges that life brings that bring that place up again and again, so that it's possible then to follow that anxiety and go in and really feel, okay, wow, there it is again. Can I feel this? Can I be present with this? Can I stay with this? Or do I have to cover it and pretend? Do I have to perform and act out? And that's just a process which is very personal and individual, I think, for everybody. But the good news is that it is completely possible. Right. It is our nature. Right. It is our essence to be grounded in ourselves. We're not born to be castrated and compensating. Think of the condition the world would be in right now if men had a good relationship to their masculinity. If they weren't having, what the outcomes of that would be. It's almost mind-boggling to think of. So basically we live in a world of castrated men.
Okay, good. Well, that's a good cliffhanger for part two. In the meantime, if people want to find out more about you and your work, can you give out some websites of where they can get some information?
Yeah, sure. Well, I have one website which just basically has my schedule up right now. It's under reconstruction. That's Rafia at, what is it? It's info@rafia.info.
Rafia.info, I think.
Rafia.info is the website, yeah. And then there's another one called workingwithpeopletrainings.com, where I'm working with people and teaching them how to work with people. We're going to launch a section on relationships this year. And another one is pathoflove.net.
Okay, great. Brilliant. Thank you, Rafia. It's certainly been stimulating.
It's been really fun, Alex. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
No, thank you. And thank you for watching Conscious Tea, and we look forward to talking to you again, hopefully very soon. Bye-bye.